Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Fireside chat today. I'm Sarah Rasmussen. I'm the new artistic director here at McCarter Theater Center on the campus of Princeton University. I'm here by our fire pit with an incredible guest today, Tracy K. Smith. Tracy is a Pulitzer-prize-winning poet. She is the 22nd Poet Laureate of the United States and is currently the chair of the Lewis Center for the Arts, right behind us, a frequent collaborator of McCarter's. So thank you for your time, Tracy. This is such a joy to have you here today. I'd love to start by just your own writing practice in this extraordinary year of 2020, and how is this year affecting what you write, how you teach?
Yeah, this year has had a big impact, I feel, on every aspect of life. I felt coming into the virtual, reality, is that a new way of thinking about virtual reality, that everything was going to be busy, compressed, and I probably wouldn't get to do much writing. But it's been such an emotionally intense time in the world that I have had to take recourse to a really deepened writing practice, I think. There's a lot of pain and a lot of conflict that's risen to the surface in ways that I don't think I would have ever expected. And poetry is my way of processing difficult feelings, trying to make sense out of the questions that they give way to. And so I've written a lot. And the thing that's been really fascinating to me is that my practice has changed a little bit. I've always thought of writing as a meditative, reflective, kind of deep inward process, but I've turned to actual meditation this year. And so that's yielding a different sense of language. It's yielding a different sense of, I think, my own singularity, because my sense in where I go in that space is that I'm not alone. I'm making contact with something, and we might say that's willful, but we might also imagine that it could be real. And so even that sort of question is animating the poems in a different way, which feels exciting. I don't think life will be the same again for a long time, and so it makes sense that my relationship to language and my own art form are kind of broken open in a way.
That's really intriguing. I'll be excited to read what comes out of this time for you. I think, like you said, it's been such an extraordinary time in so many respects, and I think a lot about artists and in particular poets. I feel like friends I would never have expected to share poems are sharing poems, and I think in some ways it feels like the most appropriate response to 2020 in terms of reminding us of our humanity, in terms of moving away from really polarized ways of thinking, in terms of protest, in terms of combating loneliness and isolation in so many ways. How will we need artists differently, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I love that question. I guess it presupposes that, yes, we do have an existing need that is changing.
Yeah, I think we do, because everyone turned to, whether it's stories on Netflix or reading stories or sharing poems or, street art. It's, I think it is essential.
There have been so many, there are always so many events happening, literary events happen every night, but now they happen sometimes on my kitchen counter while I'm wrangling children. And sometimes I'm perfectly, composed sitting there, and I see the author reading something, and I hear her baby in the background. And so the distance between the artist and the process and the lived reality is kind of it's evaporated, I want to say, or at the very least it's gotten a lot smaller. And so we're vulnerable together, it almost feels. No matter that I'm watching here or something that might be happening across the country, we're in a moment, and the urgencies of our daily lives are also like on the screen with us. That's been, I feel like it's been sort of like comforting or humanizing during a time where I find myself trying to be strong, trying to make reasonable decisions, trying to in some cases, put my own wishes aside so I can serve, my kids or even the students that I'm teaching. And there's something really exciting about the fact that we're all a little bit more exposed, and there's something real and some emblem of community there.
Yeah.
But I think that artists are also feeling like the fruit of whatever it is we do is something that we want to kind of share or lend to the urgencies of the moment. I feel that way. I feel my own work is turning toward questions of race and racial justice, questions of history. I've always been interested in history, but I'm asking for help from history in a very different way. And I'm thinking about inhabiting the imaginative and creative space of a poem with a community of people who need something from this same source material as well. If art is ever somehow like temptingly about self-aggrandizement, and sometimes it is, we want things. Right now it feels like it's about something else. Like, let's build each other up. Let's rebuild this thing that is in some ways falling apart.
Yes.
I love how, so much is coming at us too in our inboxes. Terrence Hayes has written a many part series of essays and poems that are thinking about Emmett Till through the work of other poets. And they come and you're gifted with the gift of trouble in a way, which we need to understand and accept as part of the reality that we contribute to. And then this beautiful sense of joy that comes from building something useful, even out of trouble, not turning away from it, not imagining it to be gone, but to say, if I dwell in it, I can be larger inside, and maybe we can do something productive with that space.
Yeah. I love that you're talking about it being useful. That's very much the sense I had the way people have been sharing poems, of just sort of like, in the same way you'd say, how can I help you? Or can I drop off food for you?
Yeah.
Here's a poem, that does feed something so deep in us. And what do you think that is? I mean, it feels like poetry and music have that ability to just be deeply useful to people's souls. What
I
is
have
that
a
for
lot
you?
of ideas about that. On one level, I think that poems urge us in listening outward to this other singular voice that's speaking unusually about something poignant. They are just out of ourselves toward another in a way that's kind of beholden. But that also opens up a similar space within us. And I think poems give us access to what I believe is the inner life that we all have, but that we're busy and we don't always tend to. But then poems do other things. They act upon us within language and beyond language. So we're interested in the logic, we're interested in the narrative, we're interested in the feeling of word and image. But then there's also something, and this is what really feels connected to song, that kind of like creeps upon you, and it catches you in a cadence, it moves you forward, and then it changes things. There's modulation, and suddenly you realize, where have I been? Where am I now? All of that is a kind of awakening. You can get a lot out of a poem, or you can get a little out of a poem, but there's so much there. And I don't know, I feel like those gifts change the way that I move through the world when I'm at my best. They make me a little bit more open and attentive and humble. Someone else has probably understood this better than me. Let me look more closely. And I feel like that's a move we can probably afford to make a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, I think about that a lot in the practice of making theater and sharing with an audience, that there is that at the same time you feel alone, but you're alone together, and you're aware of your togetherness, and you're also aware of that inner space, and being moved, being transported somehow by it. I'm curious about, I really miss gathering in person to hear someone read poems out loud, but I'm curious about what you said about compressing that distance, through our virtual reality. Are there things that you feel will take out of this time that will make art or conversations or education more accessible, more democratic in a way? Because we're saying, hey, anyone, anywhere can, in a way, participate in this?
I do. I think some of it will be durable for that very reason. Like, okay, everything we do will not be on, pixelated screens.
Yeah.
But some of what we do can, and that will yield an amazing audience from many different places. And we can listen to the kind of community that builds through all the questions. There's a film series happening right now in the Lewis Center. It's called Kambahi Collective, and it's experimental films by Black women filmmakers.
Oh, fantastic.
It's curated by Tina Campt and Simone Lee, and we're, I think, halfway through this 4-film series, or 4-evening series. And so, usually there are 4 or 6 people who are the filmmakers talking with the curators, and then we screen the films. Many of them are short experimental films, and I don't know, there's something magical about listening to the artist. It's what we do, but knowing that she's at home, she's at home in California, she's somewhere else in the world, and we're talking about the language of film. I don't know. It's different from what happens when I go to really wonderful events in film theaters with the people in the community that I belong to, the physical community that I belong to.
Yeah.
But I also think that even beyond programming, I have spent more time in office hours with my students this year than I have in other semesters by this point in the semester. And I think that they are, they're seeking connection, but they're also willing to say, can we talk? I don't have anything to talk about, but I'm here. And I want to leave this moment. And so sometimes an office hour after class is just a conversation with another artist or aspiring artist about where you are, what you're dealing with, what you're afraid of.
Yeah.
All of those really big questions.
Yes.
I have this...
that will probably lead to great art. It may not be a question about, about the writing right now maybe, but I think those expansive conversations then,
That's something too. Useful. Do you feel that conversation has changed a little bit in this time?
I think that so many things that were maybe not as broadly in the popular imagination. Just in our theater field, I feel like a lot of us were having conversations about equity, about inclusion, about but it has just expanded exponentially in the past months in terms of a real field-wide national conversation, which is really exciting. I think I hear people using phrases like anti-racism and white supremacy. It's just as a part of their daily conversation that I would not have expected that or was not hearing that a year ago. So I think it's accelerated conversations. And certainly for, so many of our colleagues, this was all too obvious for way too long and it's way overdue. But I do think it's accelerating conversations. And I think it's also, our sense of time has shifted even, from what we notice or what we take time to have conversations about. I was showing that we're taking a lot more time to think about strategically where do we want McCarter to go in the future and what does that look like. And I think if we were producing around the clock, which I desperately miss and can't wait to get back to, those conversations would not be as in-depth or expansive.
Yeah. They're hard conversations in some ways. And I think that the fact that time has changed, I feel like time is faster and slower at the same time, but there's space somehow to come back. Okay, we can come back to this conversation again very soon. We're all kind of like here. That's hard, but I think it's also one of the rewards of this time that we can put in this work and we can be sort of support for one another in getting to deep places.
You brought some poems. Will you read to us?
Yeah, I'd love to.
That would be wonderful.
Is that indulgent? I have So I'm talking about this new practice and feelings, and feeling like poetry has given me access to others, if I might be so sort of wishful. And I've also been spending a lot of time outside. I feel like we live in such a beautiful place where there are so many trees and foxes and deer. So one of my sanity practices has just been sitting outside, literally under some trees in my backyard, and looking up or looking inward and seeing what comes to me. So this is a poem that's literally taken from that practice, called "I Sit Outside in Low, Late Afternoon Light to Feel Earth Call to Me. I wish it would grab me by the ankles and pull. I wish its shadow would dance up close, closing in. When I close my eyes, a presence forms, backs away. I float above a lake, am dragged back from a portion of sky. Down, down, the falling doesn't end. Every marked body must descend. Is the world intended for me? Not just me, but the we that fills me. Our shadows reel and dart. Our blood simmers, stirred back. What if the world has never had, will never have, our backs? The world has never had, will never have our backs. Our blood simmers, stirred back. What if the we that fills me, our shadows real and dark, is the world intended for me? Not just me, but every marked body must descend from a portion of sky. Down, down, the falling doesn't end. I float above a lake, am dragged back when I close my eyes. A presence forms, backs away. I wish its shadow would dance up close, closing in. I wish it would grab me by the ankles and pull. So it's a little bit of a heavy poem. I feel, as I mentioned, I'm thinking about race. I'm thinking about, racial justice as a public and collective act, but I'm also thinking about what it feels like in my life, with these questions now on the surface of our lives, and that beautiful opportunity, but also the struggle of that. I'm also thinking about how time feels so different, right? I feel that the days are so fast and so long, like I was saying at the same time. This is a palindrome poem that felt like it was a way of kind of just manifesting the sense of time coming and going, and minor yet major variations that occur from moment to moment. And one of the things, I guess, that I'm also really thinking about, this is a poem about an I that I claim, but there's also a we in the poem that the speaker is concerned with, a community. I see it as a community of blackness that's ongoing and historic, and actual and mundane. I'm trying to think about what the song of that feels like. I think it's a long song that's got many notes. This summer and this fall have been about mining some of the dark notes, and I'm also thinking about joy and what it means to believe in joy, and what it means to say, I'm going to learn it. I'm going to teach myself joy, and I'm actually going to teach myself to recognize how it is real and present. And so that's a poem that I'm working on that I hope will help me. Like, I'm interested in being helped by all these things, but it's been exciting to be able to work on really urgent material for me while I'm also in conversation with my students and being inspired by artists across the country. It's really intense, right?
Thank you for doing that, though. I mean, what a gift to the rest of us that you're so deeply putting yourself in this moment. It's really powerful.
Oh. I feel like I have to read you something that's a little more cheerful.
You can read poems that inspire all day long. Read.
I'll read you a translation, because I just was I spent some time working with the Chinese poet named Yi Lei, who died in 2018, and with a collaborator was able to bring some of her poems into English. She was one of the most fiercely original and like a visionary feminist poet in 1980s China, who also had a very huge cosmic vision, I think, of life, of love, of freedom. And maybe I'll read a love poem that also feels like it's exquisitely about the cosmic scale. The Nude. My eye laps at you in lamplight like a white-hot tongue. Longing draws back, then rises, tidal. The curtain of my hair announces my breasts. Your lips, a languid breeze. Like a miracle, we feast and nothing is spent. Let flesh attend to flesh, sex to sex. Oh, dexterous gold watch of the universe, on which 1 minute can straddle 100 years. I love the way that
gorgeous.
She kind of plumbs the register from the erotic to the cosmic to, something tender. And
what's the name of it again?
that poem is called The Nude, but this book is called My Name Will Grow Wide Like a Tree, and her name is Yi Lei.
I have a selfish question for you. I have young children. You have young children. What are some of your favorite ways to share poetry with younger people?
I think young people can handle poems by by adults.
Yeah.
I like reading, Emily Dickinson with my kids. If they love the rhythm of the poems, that's enough.
Yeah.
If they take pleasure in the sounds of words, that's enough. But I think they go farther than that, too. I like reading Lucille Clifton poems with them. I've read Seamus Heaney. Sometimes they would listen to a recording of him reading his poems as we lie in bed together as they're falling asleep. But then they also love children's poetry too. I visited when I was traveling as poet laureate. I visited many different communities, and in North Carolina, a woman gave me a bunch of books of A.A. Milne's poetry. So we know Winnie the Pooh, but I hadn't read his poems for children. And those are so like rhythmic and playful and fun. And my kids love them and memorize them. And I don't try and push too much about what they're reading and what they're comprehending. I feel like it gets inside of them, and it begins to raise different, observations and possibilities.
Yeah.
They have funny vocabularies now, which I love. But I think poetry, we sometimes poetry is huge. We must make much of it, but sometimes we make more of it on the outset than we necessarily need to. So we heighten anxiety about what is the task at hand, what am I going to be expected to take away from this.
Yes.
When I was traveling in the laureateship, that was something people talked about.
Yeah.
I remember poetry in school, and I'm not confident of it. And my goal was always to say, it's not about a multiple choice set of questions. It's about what you notice, what those details cause you to feel and see and remember and associate. Yeah. And we can get really far just talking about those things. So that's a great start.
Well, I should let you go today, but let us plan many poetry readings here at the McCarter
really, that would
for
be so
all
lovely.
Ages. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your work with us today. That's such a gift.
Thank you.
To all of us watching and listening. So thank you.
Thanks.